Okay, so today's broadcast is to answer, let's see if I make sure I pronounce her name correctly. It's from one of my Facebook groups, Katia Camellini Montanari. She asked, what did you do to recover so well from your traumatic brain injury? And her question was if I had used some of Dr. Joe's meditations to heal, which I did. And I answered, I'm just going to read what I explained to her. I put, yes, I was hit by an Orange County Transit Authority bus in 2017 while riding my bike, just 3 blocks shy of finishing my 16-mile bike ride. I suffered a traumatic brain injury, alopecia, neck, C5-C6, back injury, C5-C6, and L5-L6, and leg injury with an ugly scar because it sliced open my shin bone, of course. And I had short-term memory loss. I had vision challenges, foggy brain, fatigue, insomnia, tinitus, skin issues, PTSD. I dropped 8 pounds when I didn't have 8 pounds to afford to lose because I was already thin. And what else? And I've always weighed about 103 pounds. And 2 years later, I was still in a lot of pain, and I had terrible insomnia, and I had no short-term memory. That was really miserable. And I've recovered now about 98% of it. I'm way better than I ever was before. So to explain to you exactly what I did to recover from that. So I was already a meditator. I had never used meditation before. Actually, I was a meditator, but I never had done a guided meditation before, is what I should say. So I had been meditating for 20 years on my own, where I would it was my own internal meditation, but I never really had listened to a guided meditation up until 2019, which is when I read the book Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And at that time, I also decided that it was paramount for me to attend one of his week-long events. And so luckily, my long-term memory wasn't affected. It was just my short-term memory. So, for example, if I were to read something, I could not remember the paragraph that I had just read. Now, bear in mind, in order for me to read, I really had to jump a lot of hoops in order to be able to read, because my vision had changed so much and it was vacillating between two, here or there. I had kind of somewhat blurry vision, trouble focusing. So I had 2 prescriptions. I had bought 2 different pairs of prescription glasses, neither of which were doing the job for me because my eyesight was changing, and it was not static. It wasn't a fixed thing. So neither prescription was working for me. So in order for me to read, for example, I was very determined. I knew, because I was a neurosomatic practitioner, I understood how the mechanical aspects of the 8 different neurosomatic systems of the body. For those of you who are wondering what are neurosomatic systems of the body, neuro has to do with brain, how your neurology is wired, and somatic means body. So you have your visual, your auditory, your kinesthetic, your olfactory, your gustatory. You have your interoceptive system, which is your gut system. It's that gut, when you have a gut feeling about something. You have your proprioceptive system, which is what, you put your hands, for example, in your pocket. You can distinguish without looking. You can tell that that's a quarter, that's a dime, that's a nickel. It also is what gives you your separateness, where you know that you are separate from the wall, so you know not to bounce not to walk into a table or a chair, or, for example, people who are autistic don't have, their proprioceptive system is off. So that's why they bump into people. They'll be bumping physically into people all the time, bumping into walls, bumping into chairs, bumping into furniture, because they don't distinguish the separateness of their body, and they don't distinguish space. So that's your proprioceptive system. So I talked about your interoceptive system, your proprioceptive system. You have your mechanoceptive system, which is the integration mechanically of how those systems work as you operate and move. Your brain recognizes that there's a 360-degree sphere in every direction. And so there's a certain organization and mechanical way in which everybody's brain works. And so there are things that you can do to hack the use of all those different systems in order to cross over your energy, rewire and fire your right and your left brain so that the energy crosses. Because oftentimes when you've suffered any kind of a traumatic physical or emotional event, your energy runs up and down instead of it crossing over. So part of the trick is crossing the energy over and rewire, relinking, and resyncing the left and the right hemisphere of your brain using neurosomatic systems of the body and overriding what is right now so that you rewrite and put the new rewiring in place. So what I did was, so first and foremost, I was determined to get a master's and a PhD. PhD I affectionately call piled higher and deeper in this knowledge base of what Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches through his books, through his lectures, through his week-long events, through his intensive, through his progressive. And so because I understood the mechanoceptive aspects of the brain and the neurosomatics of it, I knew that I needed to forge new neurological pathways of the brain. So I decided, okay, I have to be able to read. I cannot be without reading because I have to master this content. And I need to know it and understand it at a deep level, not just memorize it. I knew that memorization was potentially going to be a challenge because I had no short-term memory. And so it took me the better part of 2 years to even realize that I had no short-term memory because after the second year, I realized that my daughter, who had been telling me for the past year, it's like, wait a minute, I talked to you this morning, you agreed to blah, blah, blah. And now she would tell me that and I would say, no, I haven't even seen you since yesterday. We haven't even talked today. I haven't even seen you, I haven't talked to you. And she said, but no, I did. And I would say to her, no, you thought you did in your mind. You thought about telling me, but you didn't actually tell me. And so I was telling her she was mistaken because I literally had zero memory, zero recollection, no experience of having seen her that day. And so after a while of her calling this to my attention, I realized there's no way she could be wrong 100% of the time. And she's too respectful to argue with me. So I realized, oh my gosh. And then as I started to pay attention, I realized I have no short-term memory. And I was in so much pain from my neck and from my back and all the other things that I was going on. I really hadn't paid that much attention about my short-term memory until, like I said, towards the latter part of that second year. And then so as I began to realize and recognize that my short-term memory was shot, and to be honest with you, for a lot of that first and second year, I didn't read hardly any because I had to sleep quite a bit to heal my body. My body was, for the first 4 months, my body was still in quite a bit of shock. And so I would go to the doctors, and every couple weeks, I would be at the doctor's and he would take my vitals. They take your blood pressure, they take your pulse, they take your respirations, they take your vitals. And I remember 2 weeks after the accident, the doctor was looking at me going, well, you look calm, you look peaceful, you look serene, but your vitals are telling me a different story. Your vitals are telling me that you're still in shock because your vitals are still high. And so a month went by, same thing. 2 months, so every 2 weeks I'm going back and I'm getting these reports that your body's still in shock, your body's still in quite a bit of tension, and all your vitals are high. So back to how I began to heal. So a year after my injury, my leg still hadn't healed. Now normally if I get a cut or a scraped knee from falling or whatever, or from whatever, or even from shaving my legs, I normally heal like within a day or two. I've been pretty quick to heal as a general rule of thumb, and I normally don't get sick. I've never broken any bones, but I've been a very healthy individual. So when a year later, my leg was still kind of raw, and it was just an ugly sight to be seen. It was all red, and just, obviously there was a scar, but there was just a lot of the tissue was just not, it was not healed over. A year, that's a long time, right? So I was obviously almost desperate to heal, and I couldn't understand why my vision wasn't better. I couldn't understand why I was so groggy, foggy brained, etc. And of course, the neurologists are always telling me it's like, you got hit by a bus. It's not like you stubbed your toe. And the brain scan shows that you have traumatic brain injury, you have PTSD, blah 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 blah. So what I did was I decided, I go, nothing's going to keep me from reading. I am determined. I got the book in March of 2019, and I decided I'm going to read this book cover to cover. This is going to be my textbook. I'm going to master it from the front cover to the back cover. I'm going to memorize as much as the concepts and precepts in this book. I'm going to apply them. I'm going to embody them. I'm going to do everything within my power to master this information. Whatever terms I'm not familiar with, I'm going to master. I'm going to know them at a granular level. And so I knew that I needed to engage my vision in terms of reading the words, because I knew that reading the words was going to inscribe it in my brain. I knew I needed to speak it, so I'm engaging vision. I'm engaging speaking it, because the neurology of my tongue moving and my voice projecting a sound that my ears would hear, I would be engaging vision. The neurology of actually kinesthetically moving my mouth, hearing it. And then I would stand as I would read the book, because I have to engage in balance as I would read the book. And then I purchased the book in paperback, because I understand the kinesthetic, mechanical aspects of how your brain feels the book. You feel the pages of the book as you're turning them. You're seeing on the page the number of the page that you're reading as you're reading it, as you're highlighting it, which I'm a very active reader. I knew that I also had to engage in highlighting and writing comments in the book as if I'm having a conversation with Dr. Joe. So it was a very integrated approach, a very hands-on, a very kinesthetic, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, not just from the whole body perspective, but also from the perspective of speaking. So I would read the book out loud as if Dr. Joe, I was kind of like a voice actor, acting as if I was Dr. Joe, speaking the book as if those were my own words. Now that's, again, I'm doubling my neural synapses from 1300 to 2600, as the scientist Dr. Eric Kandel, who won a Nobel Peace Prize over 20 years ago for his work on how the memory works, how the brain works, and so forth. He showed and proved and won a Nobel Peace Prize in medicine and physiology, which I talk about also in the Intuition Manifesto book that I just wrote. And Dr. Joe also mentions it in his book, Becoming Supernatural. So I'm engaging all this, and I didn't care how long it would take me to read the book. I didn't care how long it would take me to learn what I needed to learn, to embrace, to embody, and to activate it in my system, where I would actually be doing the meditations and doing everything that was necessary in order for me to heal. I figured I had the rest of my life to master this, and I was going to heal no matter what. I knew that not healing was not an option. So I was resolute, I was crystal clear that I was healing. Even though I hadn't been healing as fast as I wanted to heal, I was healing at a snail's pace. But with this information, with this knowledge, with this expertise and guidance, I knew that I could implement this. So the other thing that I did, in addition to doing that, and I would stand as I would read the book for as long as I could stand. Sometimes it wasn't very long because my neck, my back, because of the physical pain that I was in. So I couldn't stand that long. So then I would sit at my desk and I would, read this book. Or sometimes I would move to the sofa in the living room and I would read the book. I would also go to my bathroom and I would look at myself in the mirror as I was reading the book, as if I was an actor reading a script and trying to memorize and to embody and to activate the words as if they were my own. Now, at first, I had to, because I could not see very clearly, I could not read the pages of the paper book or the Kindle, I actually bought, I don't know what you call them, but they're like 8 by 11. It's like a plastic sheet that is like a magnifying plastic that makes the words look bigger. So I would use that sheet, I would put it above the book. It took a little juggling sometimes, I would have it on the desk, I would be standing, I would hold the sheet up, and then sometimes I would also have to hold a magnifying glass in order to read the pages of the book. But again, nothing was going to keep me from accomplishing my goal. This is what I knew I wanted to do and I had to do, and this was my path to healing. And so that's what I did with the book. And then as quickly as I ordered the paperback, I also ordered the Kindle version. Why, you're probably going, if you have the paperback, that's all that you should need. Again, I understand as a neurosomatic practitioner, I know how the body interacts mechanically, the different 8 neurosomatic systems of the body. So by my reading it in paperback, that's one experience that I'm feeling, sensing, touching, seeing, hearing, tasting, being. And then now I hold my Kindle and now I'm rereading it. It's a different sensory experience because of the weight of the Kindle, my swiping to the left, my highlighting the Kindle with my finger. I'm rereading the same information over and over again. My commenting, my looking up certain words in the Kindle. It's a different kinesthetic feeling experience. So I did that with the Kindle. And in addition, when I would first get up in the morning, after I had meditated, because I immediately committed as soon as I bought the book. I bought the book and I immediately bought his, I didn't know what 2 meditations to start off with. So it made sense. I just went off of my intuition, and I had already tested my intuition. 2019, I tested my intuition the entire year, but I had already been attuned to my intuition. So my intuition told me to get the meditations from Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So that's the water rising meditation and the body parts meditation. And so I started with the body parts meditation, and I just like a pit bull will lockjaw on a piece of meat and won't let go until it's done with it. That's how I was with the meditations. Hour and 23 minutes long, and I didn't care because I had to heal. So first thing in the morning, I would move myself. I would sit in the middle of my bed. I would sit lotus style, legs crossed, and I would turn on the meditation and I would start to do the meditation. Then once I was done, then I would get up and I would turn my Kindle on and I would put the audio version of the Kindle at the bottom. I had that activated so I could listen to the Becoming Supernatural audiobook as I was getting ready in the morning, as I was brushing my teeth, brushing my hair, getting dressed, all of that. So then I would listen to it. So I'm reading the paperback. I'm reading the Kindle version. In both Kindle and paperback version, I am highlighting. I am reading out loud. I am writing notes, black pen, in the book as if I'm having a conversation with Dr. Joe saying, oh my gosh, I'm having this awareness. Oh my gosh, this is the aha, the insight that I have right now. Or whatever kind of comment I would have had if we were talking in person. I'm having a conversation with the author. And then in the Kindle, I would write whatever comments would occur to me as I read, which funnily enough, there are different insights that I would have as I would read the book, in paperback as opposed to reading it in Kindle version. So that is how I got my memory back, was doing that as well as doing the meditations religiously every single morning, every single night like clockwork. Chapter 3. My gosh, if you go to chapter 3 in Becoming Supernatural, to this day, I will tell you, I've been saying it since I first read it in 2019, in March of 2019, and I will still tell you now, that Jace goes quantum. That is the cat's meow. That is the formula. It was so vivid and bright for me that I thought, oh my gosh, if Jace could manifest a dream job with such detail, with everything and more than what he wanted, then surely I can manifest not just healing, I can manifest all sorts of things. And I really took that to heart. And so much so that I used it to get into the first Dr. Joe event, because when I signed up in June, actually it was April 24th of 2019 to go to the June Cancun event, it was sold out already. And so it didn't matter. I just applied Jace Goes Quantum. I just knew that it was going to work. It worked for Jace. It's going to work for me. Done. And it came to pass. So getting back to how I healed, it was really, there's no other option. You know, conventional medicine says once you have brain damage, you can't heal it. You can't even manage it. It's just something you have to learn to live with for the rest of your life. Now, I had also been already exposed to Dr. Daniel Amen and his work. I had been following and aware of him for the better part of 20 years. He had spoken at several conventions that I had attended. I was very well aware of his brain scans. Interesting how the human mind works, because I was actually working with executive producer Jerry Sher on a traumatic, of all the things in the world. You can't, the divine, again, the divine really has a funny sense of humor. Because Jerry, I remember when she said that she wanted to do this documentary on traumatic brain injuries and so forth, I don't know if it was a function of my short-term memory not working or what it was, but I didn't connect the two between doing the documentary on traumatic brain injuries with her and my traumatic brain injury. Somehow, I don't know how, but there was a disconnect there. Probably because my short-term memory was shot. So I went on to be on set for principal photography at Dr. Daniel Amen's. And for some reason, I don't know why it didn't occur to me. It's like, oh, I've got a traumatic brain injury. Maybe he should scan my brain too. It wasn't until, I think, a few weeks, maybe a week after, interestingly enough, our shoot was August 18th, 2018. Again, the divine has a very funny sense of humor because my date of birth is the 8th. And so what are the chances that the shoot on traumatic brain injury would be on 8/18/18? Well, it was. So about a week after the shoot, it finally struck me during one of my meditations. Hello, you were in Dr. Daniel Amen's office filming on a traumatic brain injury. You were there with A.D. Davis, with Jerry Sher, and with Alan, her husband, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, get your butt into Dr. Daniel Amen's office and get your brain scanned again and start to get treatment. And so I did. As soon as I realized, I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe that this, I'm like, I don't know why there was a disconnect, but there was. But again, I think it's part of the divine design. God has a very funny sense of humor. God knows exactly what we need, when we need it, how we need it. And so once I realized and I recognized that, I called the Amen Clinic. I booked and I paid to get my brain scan, and then I immediately started on the supplements, which is the Brain Max, which I still take to this day. There's organic supplements with no sugar whatsoever, organically sourced base ingredients. It's all for the purpose of nourishing your brain and optimizing it. And so I got those supplements along with the brain focus formula, and I started to do that. And then as I started to apply some of the neurosomatic methods that I employ for myself, like at first I did some EMDR with one of Dr. Amen's people, but then I quickly realized that I came up with the PSMO method and the neurohealth reset, which I think as I healed, those things started to come in. So I really have to say that the foundation was that Becoming Supernatural book. It is what triggered, it was like a catalyst that triggered something in me that I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it would work for me. There's so much scientific evidence in that book, and I already had such a strong spiritual connection with my creator, with the divine. And I had already been not just practicing, but I had been playing and experimenting with my best friend, Tammy, who lives in Hawaii. We have already been students of energy medicine, having studied Donna Eden, the Sedona method. the Jose Silva mind control method. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. We had also done, like I had done some like everything from spiritual warfare through the churches that we were attending, as well as other energy healing, Kabbalistic type of methods and so forth. So in a nutshell, that's how I healed. Really, the crux of the matter is meditations are very, very powerful. When you meditate, you automatically have to breathe properly. There's a certain method that you have to employ in order to meditate. If you know anything about human biology, about human physiology, you will know that the breath, the breathing through the left versus the right nostril, that affects the different hemispheres of the brain. The right hemisphere is an entirely separate organ from the left hemisphere. Your left nostril controls your right hemisphere. Your right nostril controls your left hemisphere, which is why it is so important for you to nasal breathe and not breathe through your mouth. Breath is the fastest way for you to reduce inflammation, to sedate the hippocampus, the reptilian side of your brain, to stop, slow down, and halt the fight or flight response. And so as you breathe as slowly as you can, and as you employ, whether it's box breathing, or there's so many different types of breath I'm not going to get into today because that's not part of this, but the breath is the remote control of the brain. I had read a paper and I had learned about how neuroscientists had discovered that your breath is the remote control of the brain back in, I think it was 2015 is when the paper, I think the paper was actually published in 2013 and I read it in 2015, years before I had my traumatic brain injury. Now, with all of this being said, I am not a doctor. But I was pre-med biosci, I was a first responder, I was an emergency medical technician, yada, 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 and now a neurosomatic practitioner, clinical neurosomatic practitioner. That being said, I do have a lot of background in neurology because, number one, first of all, I had four high-risk pregnancies. First child passed. So I had three children to this day. And unfortunately, my oldest son suffered a very rare neurological condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which was my first bout of face-to-face, one-on-one experience with a whole battery of neurologists at that time. He was 11 years old. So I used to think that a neurologist, that it was just, a brain specialist and that was it. When my oldest son became paralyzed from the neck down and he almost died, he was in pediatric intensive care unit for 11 and a half weeks. And in the first 5 weeks, they weren't sure that he was going to make it. They thought he was going to pass. There's a high degree of people who pass from Guillain-Barré because it's a paralysis. It's your immune system attacks your peripheral nervous system, and it manifests in the progressive paralysis that starts at your feet and it gradually goes up. When it hits your diaphragm, what happens is that your diaphragm is the organ that helps you inhale, helps your lungs inhale and exhale. It's what, brings the up and down inhaling and exhaling motion. When it hits your diaphragm, then you can't breathe on your own. And if they don't catch it in time, you pass. If they manage to catch it in time, they put you on a respirator, a ventilator to assist your breathing, and hopefully you won't pass away from that. Luckily for him, even though he was paralyzed from the neck down, he was spared and it never affected his diaphragm. He couldn't use his arms, his leg. He was basically paralyzed from the neck down. It never affected his brain either, thank God, and it never affected his respiration. The fact that it never affected his respiration is a huge aberration, but it was also part of my intention. I suspected at the beginning that he had Guillain-Barré, and my then husband, now husband, he had a coworker who 4 months before died of Guillain-Barré. It was really the coincidences and the serendipity was kind of crazy because my other son had a classmate who was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy while he was in kindergarten. And so, and then I had a client who is usually multiple sclerosis only hits women, but on rare occasion it can affect men. So I happened to have a client who was in his 40s, and I remember when he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and as he expressed and shared with me his symptoms and how his diagnosis went down and how his progress was coming along. So here I'm listening to one of the moms from my youngest son's class explain how her older son, because our two younger sons were in kindergarten together, she's expressing to me, the symptoms and the status of her older son who has muscular dystrophy and a shortened lifespan and everything that goes with it and the battle of having to deal with that. So I was acutely aware of the symptoms of muscular dystrophy. I was acutely aware of the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law's sister-in-law also was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she was like 30-something. So I was very aware of those neurological conditions. My father-in-law had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. So now we have this situation with my son coming down with Guillain-Barré, and in that experience, I learned all the different, I can't say all, but I learned of many specializations within neurology. For example, we had one neurologist that just was specialized on the electrical conductivity of the nerves in the muscles. And so that particular neurologist ended up testing my son to see, because one of the problems with Guillain-Barré is that he had the most severe form of Guillain-Barré, which is the axonal Guillain-Barré, which means that, normally a nerve looks like your hand. Here is the nucleus, and this is the axon, this is the head, and these are the dendrites, these are the nerve endings. Then you have the stem, and then at the end of the other end is basically the same thing, another axon with dendrites and with the nerve endings, right? So in the mild form of Guillain-Barré, your immune system will eat just the nerve endings. In the severe form of Guillain-Barré, it eats the entire head so that only the stem is left, but there's no way of making the electrical conductivity. The nerves can't touch each other because the filaments aren't there, and so there's no connection, which is why you have a paralysis. So unfortunately, that's what my son had. And so I got a great deal of exposure, learning, reading, studying about neurology at that time, and dealing one-on-one with over a dozen neurologists that were assigned to him with all the different specializations just to keep him alive. And so it took him about a year, but he recovered. He came home at the end of the 11 weeks. He came home in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the neck down. And then the journey of recovery took place. So that's part of, my history, some of the challenges that I had to overcome in order to help my son survive, help my son thrive, grow. He's happy, healthy, and even wealthy now. He's fine, right? But it was a process. And it also, I did a lot of praying, a lot of meditating during that time. I'll probably do a video that will talk just about that in another broadcast. In this one, I just want to kind of give a little bit of the background and share with you guys, because I have this person who I promised that I would be doing this video to explain how I healed. So I did all of those things that I just mentioned, and then I was eating organic food. I was also, I had started to adopt a larger amount of organic coconut oil into my diet. I'm going to say I've never been one to diet because I don't like the word die, and it's in the word diet, and I believe that words are powerful. And why would I never ever buy anything that says diet on it, because that's a man-made thing, and I want to live. I don't want to die, and I don't want a bunch of synthetic garbage in my body. Heck, I don't even take Tylenol or any over-the-counter drugs. Very rarely will I take something. So I've always resorted to meditation because I don't want to find out 20 years later that it causes whatever and that I'm going to be suffering some sort of consequence, because 20 years ago they didn't know this, but now 20 years have gone by and now we know that it causes horrible things. So I knew, after I studied a lot about, and I still do study a lot of different natural nutritional things that will benefit me in its natural form. So like organic coconut oil, it's an antimicrobicidal, anti-inflammatory, antiviral. It has a lot of health benefits to you. I actually have met people with my own two eyes and that are actual friends of mine. I had one friend, Dave, who when I met him, he was already muscular and firm, and I would have never thought that he'd ever been heavy, but he lost, I think, like 50 pounds in just a few months, and all he did was add organic coconut oil. And of course, I wasn't interested in losing weight, but I did recognize the benefit of the anti-inflammatory aspect of it. So in addition to putting it on my hair, using it to brush my teeth, and so forth, because I also had skin things that were going on because my chemistry was so out of whack from this accident. I had like this weird thing that was like on my chest, and like my lips were cracked, and like I said, my chemistry was, when I got hit, everything got out of whack. So I would put coconut oil all over like my skin. I would put it in my hair. I would take coconut oil. I had already been using baking soda for a long time to brush my teeth, so I was mixing it with coconut oil. It's just better for you altogether. I was also doing coconut oil pulling, which I still on occasion, you can do either coconut oil or extra virgin olive oil pulling, which is really good for your teeth and your gums and so forth. And so I was doing all of that. In addition, I was also taking, which I still take, I have green matcha tea in the morning, and I had eliminated sugar, like refined sugar. I eliminated sugar from my diet because sugar is an inflammatory agent in the body. It's a toxin. Your brain does not like sugar. And so I eliminated sugar, and I substituted sugar for either coconut sugar or grade B or A, depending on what the FDA, how they're labeling things, but basically organic maple syrup. And I use that to sweeten my green matcha lattes in the morning that I do with either coconut milk or almond milk. And to the green matcha, I added moringa. So just green oleifera moringa. I buy it in powdered form. I started buying it at Sprouts. You can also get it at Whole Foods, and you can also get it through Amazon. And I would add a teaspoon. I started off with a tablespoon and then went down to a teaspoon because a tablespoon is a little bit much for me. But I would put that in my green matcha tea and have that every morning. It's a delicious way to start your morning, and it's super good for you, super healthy, as you know or may not know. Do your own research. I can probably post some of the data about moringa, which I've given to a lot of you, and I've actually done Facebook Lives and Facebook videos, and I don't know if I've done any YouTube. I don't think I did any YouTube videos, but I know that I did post. If you go to my Facebook wall and just search moringa, you'll see that there's information there. But I'll put it in the description below so that you have that. I'll see if I can pull the coconut oil information. I think I got that from Dr. Axe, and then the moringa. The Discovery Channel did a phenomenal documentary on moringa. There's like a short version documentary, and then there's like a 1 hour long documentary that the Discovery Channel did on moringa, how it's like a super acme, like an ultimate food. And you could survive on, there's tribes in this world where they have X number, I think it's like 10, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. I want to say it's like 7 to 10 moringa leaves a day. And a person can survive on 7 to 10 moringa leaves a day because it's such a powerful, rich antioxidant, antimicrobicidal, antiviral agent, anti-inflammatory. It has, I don't remember the number of minerals, how many minerals it has and how many vitamins, but it has more minerals and vitamins than an avocado. And we all know that an avocado is a superfood. You could survive on an avocado a day ad infinitum. You have all the linoleic acids, you have all the minerals, you have all the vitamins that you need to be happy and healthy. And it also helps, like men. For men, it increases their testosterone. So, and women get a boost in testosterone too, but men get a big boost of testosterone when they eat a raw avocado. So it has more nutrients than an avocado. So I had adopted, so I did everything from a matter to matter perspective to keep myself healthy and to restore myself. And then I want to say a few months after, maybe I think 2 months after my accident, I'm like, okay, I just need to get back on the horse and I need to start bike riding again. And so, at first I couldn't do more than like 3 or 4 miles, which was, I was doing 25, 30 miles before. And so now I was like, I had to slowly, the body has an amazing muscle memory. So I went from 4 miles to like 24 miles pretty quickly. It didn't take very long. I really don't remember how long it took, but I remember it not taking very long. And so that's helping me, get the energy moving, my lymph system moving, and getting all the circulation of the blood to get distributed from head to toe, moving. Also restoring my balance, and so on and so forth. So it was a slow process, but once I went to the first week-long event, having 7 days that you dedicate to nothing but your healing, and where you retreat from everything that's known to you. You're in a completely different environment. You don't have to worry about cooking, about cleaning, about making any beds. You were there to meditate and to heal in a monastery where you have unconditional love for, there's like 13 to 1700 people in this week-long event. And I remember showing up to that event. I actually went the week before because I wanted to be relaxed and calmed, and I was just totally bathing myself with the information from the intensive and the progressive, and I was just listening to it and just doing the meditations, and in a place of just calm relaxation, I arrived knowing that I didn't have to rush to an event because this was about me healing. Then when I showed up the first day of healing, I even took the healing off the table. I just said, okay, I am here to experience whatever it is that God wants me to experience in His infinite wisdom. He knows what's the greatest good for me and the greater good for all. So I'm willing to accept, to receive, to embrace all that is for me in the now. Of course, I want to have relief of pain. Of course, I want to see clear. Of course, I want all these symptoms to disappear, but really, I want to be as tuned in, tapped in, and turned on to the divine as humanly possible. And I want to make room for the supernatural to happen. I had already read Dr. Joe's book twice, and was reading also Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and I was all in. And so fast forward through that 7-day event. I don't remember if it was the 5th day, the 6th day. I know the 3rd day. I remember talking to my best friend, and she immediately told me, she goes, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to hear that you've cured your insomnia, because that was a miserable experience where my insomnia, I would be awake till 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. I was fully awake. I could not go to sleep. And it didn't seem like even meditating. It's like I would meditate. Meditating would energize me. Meditation was healing me, but it was also energizing me. So I clearly wasn't tired. I may have been in pain. I was tired of being in pain, but I wasn't tired. I wasn't fatigued. I wasn't exhausted. So the first thing that was healed was the insomnia. The next thing was my back. I noticed that, I think it was the 5th or 6th day. It was definitely not the last day. It was the 5th or the 6th day I noticed. And I was a Healy, where I was at the center of 8 people. We call the 8 people that are healers around you, they form a cage. They're surrounding you in a circle, and you're the subject, and they're just taking their hands. They don't touch you, and they are just directing energy from their heart and through their hands to you. And I was a Healy, and I remember, I think it was the 5th day, again, it may have been the 6th, and I just remember my back went from always feeling crunchy and painful, and it would inadvertently crunch or snap or click, anywhere along my spine, and it was kind of a, like I said, crunchy popcorny type brittle feeling to to this day. To this day, since then, my back feels rubbery, elastic. I have not had that crunchy back feeling or the need to crack. It's like my neck is limber. Like if I tried to do this before, it would have cracked and it would have been terribly painful as I went to move it. My range of motion, I think I could only go from here to like here. Like now I can almost align to and I'm not in pain when I do that. And this way too, I have a fuller range of motion, but my neck's not cracking, it's not in pain. My spine doesn't feel crunchy anymore. It's been elastic and spongy ever since then. So those were the first things that I noticed. And then there's a few things that are like my skin. That was the other thing that cleared up too. And I didn't notice the skin thing because I think so much of my concern was the sensitivity of my neck and my lower back, and then the ugly scar on my shin. But that's basically how I healed. And it was a slow recognition that I healed these certain things. And so I didn't know at first if the crunchy back was going to come back, if the painful neck, because one of the things was like when I would go to lay down at bed at night or in the morning, or whatever, just even setting my head gently on a pillow, I had to do it. I had to move so slowly, so gingerly, because I would have a searing pain in my neck. Sometimes it was my neck and my back. All of a sudden, it was just, there's no comfortable position. Didn't matter how many pillows I would prop up. I would get like a king size big pillow and another king size pillow and then another standard pillow and just trying to make myself comfortable. I couldn't really lay down completely flat because that was too painful. So it really was, a very gingerly finagling of trying to position myself so that I could get to sleep. And then while I'm laying there, being in pain, doing another meditation, because I would do my meditations always sitting down, cross-legged in the center of my bed. And then once I would meditate before I would go to sleep, then after that I would lay down and then I would do another meditation to try and put myself to sleep. But sometimes the meditation would just go on and on and on and on. And sometimes you're experiencing such, like you go off to these far off mystical places that you have no idea where they are. You see so many beautiful colors. You experience so many things. You don't want to stop and you don't have a sense of time. So sometimes it's like I would, then go to open my eyes and it's 8 or 9 or 10 in the morning and I still hadn't slept. And so it's like, okay, so then my circadian rhythms were so out of whack. One of the things that some people don't know is that when you are in a place of grief, let's say you've lost a loved one. In my case, I hadn't lost a loved one, but I had lost the previous life that I had known where I was happy, healthy, and wealthy. I was physically fit. I was like just excited because I had just, finished the tail end of my divorce. It was actually a month before I finally received my final divorce papers. And so, to get slammed with this was, in a way, at the time I thought it was a setback, but I realized it was not a setback, it was a setup. And it was a setup to catapult me to where I am right now, because my life is black and white from where it was before. I mean, radically different than I was before in so many different ways. And some of my friends who've known me from before will tell you, it's like, wow, yeah, she's very different than I was before. So anyhow, that is the story of how I healed and how I continue to heal. I still do myself every morning. You guys have seen me post not only here on YouTube, but also on Facebook Live, the PSMO method. I got to tell you, my friends and gems, the PSMO method for people who I've been guiding who are actually in ICU, who can clearly not stand on their 2 feet and do the third part of the PSMO. I'm here to tell you that I have had private clients who have been in the ICU, who will do the first two parts of the PSMO. Some of them have been in a coma and were still able to hear instruction because their spouses were able to have the nurse, the attending nurse, hold the phone up to their ear. And those people are home now, by the way. And one had even blood clots in her lung, I might add. Anyhow, she did the PSMO because, as you know, the first part is breathing. And one person was actually on a respirator. They didn't think she was going to make it. She did the breathing, the physiological size, 3 sets of 3. She did the maniocular technique. Now, when she did the maniocular technique, she couldn't wave her hands because she was in a coma. But in her mind's eye, she was moving her eyes left and right, doing the 3 sets of 10. And then the lymphatic flush, which is the last part, she just simply imagined her body doing it in her mind's eye. And within a few days of that, guess what? She became conscious, and then they took her off the respirator, and then the doctors said, it looks like she might be able to go home in the next week. So this stuff works if you work it, but no one can do it for you. No one can breathe for you. No one can make you move your eyes to the left or right without moving your head. No one can force you to do anything. It's your free will. It's your choice. You can choose to stay in the familiar past, stay in the painful past, stay in the way of thinking that created the conditions that are forcing you. It's not a set back, but a set up to lift you up, to quantum leap you forward to a better place in time. That in the very near future, you will look back and go, oh my gosh, when I was at the bottom of that ditch, that was exactly where I needed to be, so I could jump out of that ditch and I could land on higher ground than I ever was before. And so my message to you is that I hope that this motivates you. I hope that this encourages you. I hope that you would recognize some element of me that is just like you, where I didn't have all the answers, but I was open and receptive to receive and know that if somebody else could heal. Dr. Joe got hit by a truck while riding his bike. He was waved into oncoming traffic by a police officer. How horrible is that? And he broke his back. Knock on wood, I didn't break my back. I didn't break any bones, which is a miracle in and of itself. But he was able, even though the doctor said you need to have Harrington rod surgery to hold this big cannonball that we call a head. It's almost 20% of your body weight is in your head. I don't know if you recognize that. And the rest is history. He was able to walk out of the hospital 12 weeks later, and so can you. So it doesn't matter what your circumstances are, you can overcome. So I'm going to finish this here. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in, turning on. I love you all, my friends and gems. As always, I will say ciao for now, and thank you for tuning in, tapping in, and turning on. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, be sure to write below. Make sure you hit the like button and you share this with someone who you think will benefit from this message, just as you have. All right? And please let me know if you have anything that I can help you with. I'd love to hear from you. Bye-bye now. Oh, and make sure you get your copy of the Intuition Manifesto and 2 copies for friends that you can have in your study group. All right? Increase your intuition now. Bye.